This video was sponsored by Perfect World and Hob, which recently launched on Nintendo Switch. Imagine a game with a Zelda-like style, a surreal sci-fantasy world, engaging combat, an ability upgrade system, tons of puzzles, and even platforming elements. It's a bizarre tale of robots and strange creatures and mechanized landscapes and giant robo-arms. And it was all ported to the Switch by the exceptionally talented Panic Button. If you missed it, I did a whole impressions video on the game, so click the link in the description if you want to hear my thoughts. And I'll also include an eShop link if you just want to find out more. One more thank you to Perfect World, and on with the show. Hapacha.
Hello, hello there, my... Hello there.
Hello, I am Arlo. You are listening to Arlo, the one and only Arlo. This is his voice. Though I suppose I should interject and let you know this is actually Kane, Arlo's editor, filling in on vocal duties while Arlo recovers from bronchitis. And I'm really not sure why he's trying to make it look like my voice is his voice when I sound nothing like him, and you already know this isn't him speaking, but it seems to be a thing he wants to do with the mouth flaps and everything. Look at him go. Man. So anyway, here's a video he wrote about how the release schedule on the Switch was really amazing at first, but how now it leaves something to be desired. And that's the video we're about to do. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to keep filling out time until he's done, or... yeah, he just keeps going on. He's not stopping anytime soon. Alright, I guess we'll just start. So let me get this out the way first. Do I have to say me like I'm you? Yeah, he's nodding at me like I do. Okay, sorry, just feels kind of weird, I guess. But let me, Arlo, get this out the way. I love my Switch. You know that. I am very much happy with it, and I know that at the end of its life, I'll be satisfied by the library. While watching this video, keep in mind that this is an issue of potential. It's a situation that's overall good, though I just feel like it could be better, or should be better, or would be nice if it was better, or something. Basically, just don't think that I'm sitting here mad at Nintendo or anything, because I'm not. I've just got some questions about their release schedule. I, Arlo, the person that you're listening to right now, have done 2 videos on this subject already. The first being Switch, the death of droughts and delays. In the video I talked about how the Switch's first year was absolutely bonkers. There was a steady stream of major new releases and ports, and as such there was something new to play almost every month. It was an unprecedented launch year for a system, and I can never stress enough how unusual it was in the industry. Lackluster first years are pretty much par for the course for most systems because the hardware is still new, and it takes developers a while to make great new games for it. Nintendo was in a very good strategic position though. They leveraged new and old titles alike, along with a very serendipitous third-party offering from Ubisoft to start the Switch's life off with a bang. And in my video, I explored this sudden increase in titles, wondering if this could all signal a new standard for Nintendo. Ultimately, I knew it wasn't likely that Nintendo would always be able to keep up with such an extraordinary pace, but I was confident that recent changes in the company, namely the merging of their home console and handheld divisions, would indeed result in a lot more games going forward. I mean, Nintendo has basically always developed enough software to support 2 separate systems, but with the Switch, they're putting all their eggs in one basket. How could that not mean a ton more games that we're used to getting for any one system? Well, fast forward a few months and suddenly I find myself making a video about how the first half of 2018 wasn't looking super great. Or at least not compared to most of 2017 anyway. Instead of a big January presentation like most of us expected, we got a mini direct. And instead of a great big load of new upcoming releases, we got a lot more ports. Suffice it to say, the first half of 2018 was already starting to show that the crazy lineup of 2017 was not going to be the new standard. In the video I talked about how it was a little disappointing, but ultimately I wasn't too worried about it. As much as I loved the idea of the Switch's whole life being one gigantic 2017, ups and downs were to be expected with any console. Technically, I suppose I did end up making something of a third video on this topic. My 2018 year-end review wasn't about it specifically, but I did go into what I felt about the year's release schedule. It was actually a fairly controversial video. I mean, it's all a matter of opinion, and I've gone over it so many times already, so I don't need to get into the specifics, but I will anyway. Here are all the 2018 titles I was disappointed with and why I was disappointed with them. You know what, I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit here. They don't need to hear all this stuff. Brevity is key, Arlo, I'm going to be honest with you. Alright, he doesn't look too happy, but hey, he can't talk, so it doesn't really matter. All in all, while I was still feeling hopeful at the beginning of 2018, by the end I felt as though it had been a bit lacking. Smash Ultimate was everything I could have possibly wanted from a first-party Nintendo game, but to me it kind of felt like it carried the year on its own. All the other quote-unquote major new games disappointed me in various ways, and too often felt like lighter, more casual experiences. And once again, I told myself that ups and downs were to be expected. Maybe things would get better later, yada yada yada. Thing is though, this time we all had hard evidence that things would indeed get better. By the end of the year, the schedule was cram-jam full of scrummy titles. What? That's a very Arlo sentence. Mary Berry, it says I was supposed to do a Mary Berry. Is that an American thing? Who's Mary Berry? Mary Berry. Oh, that's a very British thing. Okay, well that's embarrassing. I don't watch TV, alright? I spend all my time editing Arlo videos. Anyway, Luigi's Mansion, Yoshi, Animal Crossing, Pokemon, and Fire Emblem were all confirmed for 2019, which was a great start. That could have potentially been a major game every 2 or 3 months. Then we didn't know how far along Metroid Prime 4 and Bayonetta 3 were, but they were technically on the table, and it was pretty much guaranteed that Nintendo had at least a few more new 2019 titles to reveal. So yeah, it was looking like after the 2018 breather, 2019 was going to finally be our next 2017, or at least something close to it. But then, the year started, and we didn't get dates for most of these games. And the year just sorta started going. We got announcements for Super Mario Maker 2 and the Link's Awakening remake, which were totally great. I don't exactly feel right considering Link's Awakening a major title, despite how much I want it, but hey, maybe I'm wrong and it'll sell a ton, whatever, let's count it. Link's Awakening was set for sometime later in the year, but Super Mario Maker 2 was set for June, meaning as far as first party goes, the first half of this year has been considerably more barren than even 2018's was. We had Labo VR, which wasn't exactly exciting, and we had Yoshi, which I ended up really enjoying, but come on, we gotta pick up the pace here. And now we know that Mario Maker will technically make it into the first half of the year, but only just, coming right at the end of June. So despite all the releases still in the cards for this year, I'm left wondering, where have they been all this time? But more importantly, if I may, where is the port for Star Fox Zero, which Arlo, am now deciding is actually a pretty terrific game. I was completely wrong on all fronts, and I changed my mind. Arlo, alright, okay, give me back the microphone, Arlo. I'm sorry. Okay, Arlo, I had to do it once. I won't do it again. Alright. Anyway, where were we? Which leads us to now. Metroid Prime 4 was scrapped and restarted, which I'm still recovering from, and from the way the Bayonetta team is talking about 3, it doesn't sound like they'll be done anytime soon. So we know those 2 games aren't really on the table anymore. Luigi's Mansion and Animal Crossing are coming later, and they weren't announced that long ago, so they were always likely to be in the second half of the year. Both Mario Maker and Link's Awakening, though, feel like they would have fit really well closer to the beginning, like if they'd been announced last year instead. Fire Emblem 2, that's been coming for so long now that it's weird it wasn't a spring or late winter release. See, here's the thing. Because of the way these titles are being scheduled, we're in something of a precarious situation. If between July and December we get Fire Emblem, Luigi's Mansion, Animal Crossing, Pokemon, and maybe one other currently unannounced thing if we're lucky, that'll be a pretty decent second half, especially when supplemented with inevitable third-party and indie content. And also when supplemented with Daemon X Machina and Astral Chain, which I constantly forget exist and I have no idea how big of a deal they're gonna be, or if I should count them as big titles or what. But whatever, that would be a pretty mean lineup. I mean, Animal Crossing and Pokemon are top tier series, and Luigi's Mansion and Fire Emblem have been solid performers. One problem though is that even with a great second half, I kind of feel like no year should be quite so unbalanced. Yoshi and Labo for a significant amount of the year, and then suddenly, like a million great games one after the other. Bigger problem still is that if one or more of these games ends up getting delayed into 2020, that's gonna weaken the year considerably. A lot of these games are probably safe, but seeing as it's already May and all we know about Animal Crossing Switch is that it exists, a delay would not surprise me in the slightest. and that would bring down the year by a good chunk. But hey, maybe I'm just obsessing over the exact number of games we get each year or whatever. But what all this really boils down to is me wondering, what's up? I mean, I get that you can't rush genius. Things happen, they're done when they're done, and that's fine. But I'm just wondering why the overall output hasn't really picked up speed. And again, that's because of the whole home console handheld merging thing. I mean, just look at the 3DS and the Wii U, which were Nintendo's complementary consoles for a time. After a somewhat rocky start, the 3DS went on to get about 16 skrillion amazing games. The Wii U as well got a solid amount of decent titles. Not enough to make it sell, but certainly a fine little collection. Between the 3DS and the Wii U, we've got something of an idea of what Nintendo is capable of producing. I'll admit that developing for the 3DS was probably considerably easier than developing HD games for the Switch, so that could throw this number off a little, but you could still see a huge number of studios and a substantial amount of development resources represented across these two libraries. It's clear now that Nintendo was having a hard time making enough games to sustain two separate systems, but one of the most exciting things about the Switch was always that it would have all of Nintendo's support all to itself. In theory, this should increase game output dramatically, right? And that's really why I've been looking at the Switch's library and enjoying a lot of what I've been playing, but also feeling like there could be more. If every one of Nintendo's development studios are working on games for it, and now they're even looking to third parties to help with their major IPs more often, then why do we keep getting these empty chunks of the calendar? So many of the games we're getting are ports, and that's great, I love ports. But ports are not developed like new games, and if you take out all the ports, the emptiness of 2018 becomes all the more baffling. And the only reason these ports are standing so well on their own is because the Wii U sold so badly. Nintendo isn't always going to have a failed system's games to fall back on, which is all the more reason I keep expecting a big change in the output of brand new titles. This whole time I've been holding my breath and waiting to see if the floodgates were going to finally open and we would start to really reap the rewards of having one single major Nintendo system. Again, maybe it wouldn't quite reach the dizzying heights of 2017, simply because you're not going to get a big fat Mario and a big fat Zelda every year, but I keep expecting the Switch to really hit its stride and get enough games that it feels like they're coming constantly, without any long periods of waiting. I know that not every game is going to be for me, but it's a lot easier to take a game that I don't care for when I know that a game I do care for will be coming next month. When those games just keep on coming, there's this constant buzz around the system, this really fun feeling like it's spurting out titles for everyone and your turn is coming soon. But 2019 makes up most of the Switch's third year on the market, and that just isn't happening right now. I can think of a handful of potential reasons why it's not. The first is what I already mentioned, the 3DS was probably considerably easier to develop for. It could be that it's just taking the teams a lot longer to get their stuff out, and if we're lucky, maybe their output will even increase once they're accustomed to developing for a HD system. I know Nintendo in general had a good amount of trouble with that on the Wii U. Similarly, it could be that there are indeed a ton of Nintendo devs working on all sorts of titles for the Switch, but it just happens to be that a high percentage of those titles still need more time to cook. Maybe next year or the year after we'll be completely inundated by great titles. Maybe the Great Flood has always been coming, and I just needed to be a little more patient. Maybe it's a combination of those two reasons. Or, as much as I hate to admit it, maybe I always overestimated how many teams Nintendo has and how much software they can put out, and it was always unrealistic to think they could achieve this development nirvana that I'm dreaming of. I really don't think that's the case though. Sure, big patches of the Wii U's library were empty, but I still can't take that whole library, including high-budget duds like Star Fox and Paper Mario, because they still count, combine it with the 3DS's whole library, imagine jamming it all onto the Switch, and not being blown away by how many potential titles that is. And that's even when I try to compensate for the disparity in developing for the 3DS versus the Switch. When I look at Nintendo as a whole and all the teams they've got under them and all the money they've got to dump into development and all the IPs they've got to work with, what I imagine is just not exactly what I'm seeing on the Switch right now. The thing is great, but it just feels like it can be so much more. You know, coming from a dumb internet guy with no business experience or insider knowledge of the inner workings of Nintendo and its development assets. You're welcome. So at the end of the day, am I absolutely livid that I don't have a new game to play every 4 seconds, and certain that the Switch's release schedule will slow to a tiny trickle at any moment and stay that way for the remainder of its life cycle? Nah. I just like to see a business live up to its potential. Okay, I mean, don't get me wrong, I also like to play games, and I just want more games to have and play. But more than any other company, Nintendo benefits from having a strong first-party lineup. Everyone else has generally got the benefit of ample third-party multi-plat support. But even though the Switch is getting decent third-party support, it is, and always will be, all about them first-party games. That's Nintendo. Without Pocket Monsters and Jumpmans and Fairy Sword Boys, they wouldn't have a leg to stand on. Everyone's always talking about how much money they made from the Wii and the DS, enough money to last them 1,000 million years or whatever. So I want to see them using that money to get more and more titles on their system, as many as possible. Even if I say a major release every month probably isn't possible, I secretly kinda also believe that it is for a company that big with such a huge reliance on first-party titles. So let's see it, Nintendo. New Zelda every month, starting now! Well, thank you for watching, everyone. All nice comments can be placed in the comments below, and any angry comments about how greedy and impatient Arlo is can just be aimed at Kane for some reason, or I guess that's what it says in the script. Fantastic. At any rate, thank you for watching, everyone. This has been another great video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. And he's still going. I don't know how to pad this video out. Oh, is he doing okay? I don't. What is he think? Okay, all right. Okay, I guess he's having a nap. What better time, you know, than at the end of a video while you're still recording? Doesn't matter. Anyway, I guess I'll see you guys next time. While we're here, I guess he can't hear me, subscribe to my channel. Kane's the name, why not? I mean, he can't stop me. Yeah, this has been fun. Bit of a surreal experience, but it's been fun. I guess I'll see you next time. Bye.